Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good day. We always just start saying good day. This is Genia Engelstad from Elite Escrow Services in San Diego.
And PJ Garcia from Beach Pacific Escrow.
And this is Escrow Talk, right? We have our own little logo, too. Has anyone looked at it on our Escrow Talk
I don't think we've
YouTube?
been really broadcasting it too much yet.
We're going to have to do that because it's a cute little palm tree thingy, right? It's kind of cute.
I have to tell you something funny. The music that our technical recording person, our producer came up with, he said, what is it? It's the King... In the Hollow of the Mountain King is the name of it. And he said it made him think of Escrow because it starts out all calm and slow.
And there's a crescendo.
And then it just gets busier and busier and crescendos and explodes. So,
well, I'm going to really have to totally listen to that because it's interesting because Hayden, Hayden Garcia is a millennial, I believe. And so it's interesting what his view of Escrow is. We're going to have him talk with us one day about that. But okay, I'm going to have to really listen to it because I can think of a few other songs that describe Escrow. Can't you, PJ?
Yes, one or two.
Speaking of Escrow, PJ and I were having this conversation off mic. We're so professional about cancellations, and I think many of us in our profession, we do a lot of work for free, don't we, PJ?
We do.
Now, I think people who do bulk sale transactions most people who do bulk sales really have a better grasp on this cancellation thing because I think that you, PJ, pointing at you don't really do too much unless you have money in the file so that if there's any expenses to be paid and if there's a cancellation fee, you're getting paid.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And on personal property and holding escrows as well.
So if there's a cancellation, so let me just say to you, in general, you and many of my escrow friends who do bulks, they get money. And when it cancels, they get a fee, right?
Yeah. Yes, they're a lot of work.
Okay, so here we are. We're doing a sale transaction. We get an agreement between the buyer and seller, and they give us a deposit. And we're 20 days into a 30-day escrow, and they want to cancel. And what do? Well, they give us a cancellation, right? Sometimes they use the car contract form. And then they say the buyer wants all the money back. And what do we say, PJ? What do we always say?
Well, we're pushovers and don't value our own services, so we very frequently say, it's okay, we understand.
I mean, it's not like we made 5,000 copies or we opened a title order or we did all the things that we do. We assigned an escrow number. We put the money in our trust account, which, by the way, we have to set up with the bank. We have employees that we're paying. So we put that money in our trust account and then they want to cancel and then we just give it back to them because no one in the industry charges a cancellation fee.
Well, that's the story. It's not really true. But no one ever and everyone always are the two of my favorite phrases.
But so PJ and I were talking that maybe we need to have a conversation within our profession where we are talking about cancellation fees. And if you look at section 17003 of the financial code, which talks about escrow, there's a definition. And I don't know if we could paraphrase, but it says escrow means any transaction in which one person, for the purpose of effecting the sale, transfer, encumbering, or leasing of real or personal property to another person, delivers any written instrument, money, evidence of title to the real or personal property or other thing of value to a third person. So we have a buyer, we have a seller, they have a contract, right?
Right.
They give it to us. We're named as the escrow holder, and they give us a $10,000 deposit.
Right. So let's talk about what the value of an escrow is generally. And my perception of the value is exactly defined in that paragraph, so that Party A doesn't have to trust Party B not to use and record the deed he's signed until he gets paid, or not to record the deed when he pays him.
So the seller is not going to just trust that the buyer is going to be ethical, and he's not going to say, here's the grant deed to my property and just hold it until we're really done. And the buyer is not going to give the seller his $10,000 deposit and said, yeah, go ahead and keep that. I trust you. When we close, you're going to apply that to my cost. So what they do is they engage a third party, which is us, to hold that money and that grant deed. So once we've done that,
we have an escrow.
Escrow.
We've done an escrow. That's not the way most people today tend to view it. And I will say to you that part of the reason for this is that often when an escrow cancels, it cancels very early, and not a super lot of work has been done. So as a courtesy, many escrow officers will waive the cancellation fee with the understanding that they're likely to get a transaction back in the future from one side or the other because they were so gracious. That's a whole different story than what you just described, where really it's all done but the loan documents and funding, and it's all over but the shouting, especially on a 30-day escrow, because you really have to crank these days to get an escrow ready for documents, for the buyer's loan documents in 30 days. It's work, and the cost of doing business has gone up. Our licensing fees have gone up. Our bonding fees have gone up, etc. Now we have the TRID, and that's required a lot of infrastructure and training. So all the way around, like every place else, I mean, a McDonald's hamburger used to be $2. It's $6 now, if you're lucky, if you don't get any sides. So the cost of living just goes up, and our costs have gone up, and our escrow fees, are pretty reasonable. Haven't really gone up as much as the cost of living has gone up.
Well, and remember when we had the recession, we're still recovering from that, our escrow fees are usually based on the sales price. And when the sales prices are a little higher, then our fees are commensurate. What's that word?
Commensurate.
Commensurate. Did I say it right?
You did.
Wow.
Bravo, Gina.
It's like a trifecta of draconian words. Okay, never mind. Anyway, that's a little private thing between PJ and I, but you might want to look up those words. So, when we have higher sales prices, we're getting our escrow fees based on that. But when the prices change, then we're doing the same amount of work, but our fees go down, right?
Right.
As with everything.
And let's just talk about escrow fees being based on the consideration, because they are. And there's a couple reasons for that. The primary reason is that's the liability potential that we undertake because we know that whether we do everything right or whether we do something wrong, if anybody in the transaction is unhappy with us or with the other party, we're going to go to court. And that is $10,000 off the bat.
Right.
Even if you get dismissed right out. So we're providing, and frankly, the higher the purchase price and liability, the more likely somebody is to litigate.
Well, and we need to. So I'm not necessarily saying that we should charge a cancellation fee on every file.
No.
But I'm thinking we need to have a conversation and what is our value and what we're doing, because we really have performed a function even on day 2 or day 3 or day 4 if we're holding the money and the transaction cancels. I mean, appraisers get paid. EOI direct. I mean, they get paid when they're issuing a piece of paper, whether we close or not.
And they expect us to pay them whether we get paid or not.
Exactly. Homeowners associations aren't issuing any documents until they get their money. So I think that we need to consider this and the expenses. And it's not that I want to gouge the public. I'm not saying that.
No.
But I'm just saying that we're a professional service. We should get paid for that service. And if we cancel an escrow, we should consider it as an industry talking about those fees and what we should be able to recoup some of that hard cost.
And I would say that sometimes the most time we're the most valuable sometimes is when there is a cancellation or a dispute over a cancellation. Because fundamentally, what our job is to take in documents and money and only use them when the terms that were agreed upon are met, or if there's an impasse, to hold them until both parties agree what to do with the money. And if that's not a value proposition, I really don't know what is.
Well, and I think we do it to ourselves. I don't think that. I just think we're trying to be accommodating, but we're one of the few entities in this transaction. Lenders maybe if they don't go through, but they don't get paid, or a realtor. But those are different kind of things.
They're more. Well, realtors are commission based,
right.
So clearly our fees are much smaller than either lenders or realtors. And part of the reason is that the original basis for that was that you weren't going to get paid on everything.
Right, exactly.
And that really isn't the basis for how escrow fees were structured. For a title company, they don't get paid. They've produced the title report. In some states, you pay for that.
Right.
That's California is rare. And frankly, probably people would value it more if they did have to pay for it. However, they don't get the policy premium unless they issue the policy.
Correct.
We're doing the work, and frankly, the minute you touch it, you have liability, whether it closes by successful fulfillment of the contract or whether it closes by a termination of the contract. That status is the underlying status, the status of the underlying contract, not the status of the escrow. There was an escrow from the moment we had documents and funds.
And I think we need to keep that in mind. I think that our attorney friends, they get paid. You go into their office, you ask for advice, and they get paid a fee for that. And I think we need to consider that in our world. And we're not doing ourselves a favor by us waiving these fees these costs that we've incurred because our competitor down the road does it. We're really not doing ourselves a favor as a profession. We're devaluing what we do.
And we're devaluing it, and then people don't really understand the value of it. Truly, in my experience, you get what you pay for, and B, you value what you pay for.
Right.
So if you don't think there's going to be any cost to something, how valuable do you really think it is? Why are you doing it? And that's a good question that we need to ask ourselves. And I think it's a conversation the entire real estate related professions need to have, because the expectation that other parties in the transaction set affect us. And I will say that I will never go in and bash somebody else's work product or the value of their service.
No.
However, it's not unusual to have that happen in reverse to escrow holders.
And I think I like to do PJ. I mean, PJ and I know a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of times people will say, "Well, Gina, Joe Smith down the street will do it." And I said, "You know what? Let's call Joe, because I saw him last week at an escrow meeting. Let's give him a call and see what he really does." And so I think that that's important for them to know that we talk and that we have these conversations, and that, maybe they just can't pull that. Joe Smith does it down the street, and why aren't you doing it the same way?
Well, and it doesn't really do consumers a lot of good when we're competing with each other based on things that aren't realistic. That I'm going to do things I really shouldn't be doing within the scope of my license.
Right.
That I'm going to not charge for things because, again, you get what you pay for. And when you're doing that just to get business, first of all, the image you project of yourself and your profession is poor. And that, frankly, is probably one of the reasons why consumers in general don't have a real high regard for anybody in the real estate services industry, because it's our fault. We haven't projected ourselves as professionals.
I remember one time I went to a meeting kind of on a sidebar, and ALTA, American Land Title Association, was talking. And really, they kind of acknowledged that it was their fault, I'm putting that in quotes, that they really haven't started until the recent years to tell consumers really the value of title insurance and why it's invaluable for them to have it and why you have these costs and whatever. And I think we could learn a lot from that and not getting caught in that trap by trying to, say, look, this is who we are. We do provide a valuable service. We realize that maybe really it wasn't supposed to cancel, or it wasn't your fault it was canceling, but we have a fee, and that's the other side of it. Usually the money you have is just the buyer's money, right? So that's kind of, I guess you can put unfair. See, here I am talking myself out of the cancellation fee already, PJ.
But that's an industry-wide concern, and so for instance, with a bulk sale, I make the disclosure up front that you have to put in X amount of money for me to use to pay upfront costs and cancellation charges, because I'm going to have done work. Right. And I need to get compensated for that work. You can agree to however you're going to allocate the costs at closing. You have the choice to agree for one party to put in that money or to split it. And then that's an informed choice. But we have these contracts coming out of the California Association of Realtors, the Realtors Trade Association, and that's the basis for escrow instructions now, because they decided they could write escrow instructions in 2000. So we don't get that up front. We're not that first point of contact anymore as far as escrow instructions go. Interestingly, I find it ironic that I just had a discussion recently with somebody on a cancellation of the contract that occurred 3 days before the scheduled closing on a 30-day escrow. And a very large transaction, and the buyer was adamant about not paying my $500 cancellation fee. I'm calling it a termination fee now. It's just I'm not even calling it that. I'm calling it an escrow fee.
An escrow fee.
And the instructions I issued are for termination. They're a termination instruction. And the dialogue, because I couldn't talk to the consumer, the dialogue I had with the agent was what we're just talking about. And I said, because I issued those, heard nothing, and then got back the CAR form, and I said, did you realize that on the CAR form, what you all signed for was to give the money back to the buyer less his costs? So if my regulator was a different regulator, because the Department of Business Oversight is the escrow regulator, that's their specific job, and they have a problem with not having those costs listed out. If I were with a different regulator, I could just take that fee. He's already agreed to it. So that was, and the agent really kind of didn't understand what his client had signed. He said, no, he didn't. I said, read the form.
Yeah, he did.
So it's a conversation, and I don't think I'm trying to cry poor me.
No, I don't think so.
But I think when I've put out I value my time. My time is valuable. I get paid for my time. And when and we've put out overhead resources, and part of that is just the fact that we're holding your money is an overhead to us, because our regulatory costs and bonding costs are based on the average amounts we have in our accounts. So that has an impact. That's part of the reason I tell on personal property, it's a different bond for me. So it's not covered under my other stuff. I just think we need to be realistic. We need to be better business people.
Exactly.
And we need to articulate to realtors and their customers, buyers and sellers, the value of what we're providing.
And what is the difference between, getting a cancellation or a termination or an escrow fee on a bulk that didn't go through and a real estate transaction? We're just not used to doing it. So the purpose of our PJ and my conversation is to kind of let us all go, maybe we should rethink that, and maybe we should. I don't know where it came from, but this industry standard is just not.
I think it's within the last 30 years, frankly, and things have changed a lot in the industry over that period of time. But part of it, I have to say, is competition, because you get one guy in town that will say, come bring me your business, I won't charge. Then the pressure's on for everybody else to do it. But frankly, I always find it interesting because the person you're trusting with all your money and documents, you want a nickel and dime and not pay them. I mean, that's a big responsibility. And you're trusting them with a lot. You're trusting them with one of the biggest financial transactions you do, even if you're an investor. It's a big financial transaction, and you want to cheap out on that. So I just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like if I want to go, when I went to have laser surgery done on my eyes, I didn't go to the cheapest guy.
Or the guy who's going to give you the full refund if it doesn't work out.
Right. I did my research, got referrals, and went to the guy that was on the expensive end because it's my eyes.
PJ, you guys, I wish that sometimes you guys could see PJ's face when we're having these conversations because she's pretty funny. Anyway, so I think cancellation fees, we probably beat that. That's
probably beat it. I just think it's not that there should be one on every transaction, and it isn't. We need to acknowledge to ourselves that we provide a valuable service, and that we've done an escrow, and then get that message across to everyone else, because if we don't value it, nobody else is going to.
You know what, PJ, I think we've never talked about before as we're ending this conversation about cancellations is that, if any of you out there have anything that you'd like us to talk about, I mean, because PJ and I can talk anything escrow. Actually, people, we can talk about anything. We just talk. But if there's something that you guys want us to talk about or want us to bring someone in, we're talking about having guest speakers.
We are.
And just email us, pj@escrow.net. This is much easier than Genia, Genia, at EliteEscrowServices.com. I don't know where PJ got escrow.net and I got EliteEscrowServices.com, but she was smarter than me.
I have people.
She has people. So if you guys email us and ask us that, we'd be happy to consider it because we got all kinds of escrow stuff to talk about.
Or if you have a message you want to get out that you feel passionate about, give us a call.
Totally. All right. See you next time, PJ.
Bye, Gina.